Start now. This is the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 160170, 160171, 160172, and resolution number 160180. Mr. Stitt, please read the titles of the bills and resolution.
Bill number 160170, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2017 through 2022 inclusive. Bill number 160171, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2017 capital budget. Bill number 160172, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2017. Resolution number 160180, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2017 through 2021 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2016, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this Council approved by the Mayor on January 3, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the authority.
Thank you. Today we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills just read by the clerk that constitute proposed and operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2017, a capital program and forward-looking capital plan for fiscal 2017 through fiscal 2022. Today we will hear testimony from the following departments: the Chief Administrative Office, Public Property, Procurement, Human Resources, and Fleet Management. The first person to testify from the administration is
Rebecca Rhynhart.
Morning. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Great. Good morning, Council President and members of City Council. I am Rebecca Rhynhart, Chief Administrative Officer. I am pleased to provide testimony on the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer's fiscal 17 operating budget. The CAO is a newly created cabinet-level position responsible for improving the way that the city allocates resources, acquires goods and services, and the way it hires and develops employees. The CAO's office directly supervises the operations of public property, IT, procurement, fleet management, records, OAR, the contracting unit, and the BAA. In addition, the CAA coordinates with the Office of HR. The CAO has an emphasis on improving efficiency and effectiveness across the government and ensuring accountability in the performance of government departments through implementation of citywide performance management. The CAO's office is overseeing many initiatives that will modernize processes and will bring about a more efficient government. A few of these initiatives are procurement reform and modernization, implementing changes to make our capital projects get done faster and within budget. The newly created HR and talent function within the CAO's office will assist departments with recruiting, provide training for employees, and work on process improvements so that departments can hire and retain the most talented, diverse workforce. A new performance management process to replace PhillyStat focused on collaborative problem solving and sharing best practices, and increasing open data, supporting innovation, and focusing on core IT systems. The proposed fiscal 17 general fund budget totals $4.6 million. While the budget is new for fiscal 17, the vast majority of the budget came from transfers from other departments. Funding was transferred from Finance in the amount of $3.2 million and from MDO in the amount of $1 million. Total new general fund dollars proposed in the 17 budget is $432,000. The new general fund spending by class is Class 100, $244,000, $180,000 in Class 200, and $8,000 in Class 3 and 400. This concludes my testimony. A longer testimony has been provided to you on the record, and with me are representatives from the CAO's office and the departments that report up to the CAO to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just briefly, you stated in your testimony that the new Chief Administrative Office is a cabinet-level position?
That's right.
How was that done? Was that done by charter or by executive order?
Oh, well, there the mayor has a cabinet that is officially part of his cabinet. By charter, I think there are 3 members of the charter cabinet, but by practice, the mayor establishes a cabinet that has other people in it. So I don't know how legally that's done, but it's the practice.
Say executive order.
Okay.
All right.
Executive order.
That gets you around the rules.
Okay.
All
That's a
right.
good answer then.
Yeah, I know we just did a charter change to create the Office of Planning and Development, which was a charter required by charter. So we don't normally
good.
get to do that at will. Let me ask you about, and I get on the executive branch of government, and particularly the executive staff. And does the department head have anything to do with hiring? Let me start by asking, how many exempt positions do you have in your department?
Just the CAO office?
Yeah, and if you have that information on other departments that fall under your jurisdiction.
Okay.
I'll just ask you about
Okay. So for mine are the direct employees. Do we have that? 10? Okay. We have 10 exempt employees.
I'm sorry?
10 exempt employees.
Okay, so basically they're people that are just hired without civil service requirements or exams and things of that nature.
That's right.
All right, so you have broad latitude in terms of who you hire.
Right.
Right. And in the hiring practices, let me follow up on the other earlier question. Do you have that information on the other departments that fall under your jurisdiction?
For how many exempts are in property and fleet, and I think I don't have it right on hand. I'm sure that maybe the commissioners could come up and answer that, or I could get it to you.
When they testify?
Yeah.
All right.
In their testimonies later today, they could answer that if that makes sense.
All right.
Okay.
All right, I'm just trying to get a sense of, understand transitions as it relates to one administration to the next. One of the things that we in the government have been good about is making sure that we had diversity throughout the ranks, particularly when those opportunities present themselves, i.e. exempt positions, that you do have flexibility to hire people. And I just want to see what your perspective is on that.
Sure.
And in terms of the hiring practices, not only of your office for exempt executive staff, but in other particular offices.
Obviously, I think diversity within the city is a very, very important topic and one that needs to be worked on. I think that having the most talented and diverse workforce is a goal. And to that end, we've been working closely with Nolan Atkinson, the new diversity officer, as well as we just signed a contract yesterday, I believe, with Pew Charitable Trusts, and they're going to be looking at all of our hiring and promotional practices, exempt and civil service, to make recommendations for how we have a more diverse workforce in all ranks of government, including the leadership and executive level. So I think that we need to put an emphasis on it and work towards it. Absolutely.
So when did you come to the determination that you needed to put an emphasis on that?
When did I come to the determination? I think this is an emphasis of
I'm just asking.
I think
there's
it's
a change in administration. There's a bunch of new people that get hired. In the changes of administration, normally there are holdovers like yourself.
I've always thought it's important personally, if it's a personal question.
So my question is, if it's important, which I believe you believe it is, in the administration, there are opportunities to make a statement with respect to the hiring practices pretty much day one. And I'm hearing you talk about having the need to go to Pew and other entities to make determinations. I got to tell you, I have a number of people work for me. I never called Pew or any other agency, and I found talented people And we have what I believe to be a pretty diverse workforce in city council. And I don't know why people have to figure out a way to do that.
Well, I think if we're going to go about actual, any type of code changes or civil service reg changes, we should have, an entity.
I'm not talking about civil service. I'm talking about
Exempts.
exempt staff.
I
Where
agree.
You have the flexibility of hiring whoever you want to hire.
Right, and I agree. I mean, if we're talking about the diversity in the CAO's office, the deputy for HR and talent is an African-American woman. She can come up and talk to you. I have Lisa Rodriguez, who's a Hispanic woman. So there's several new hires that do represent diversity in my group. And I do think that we can do better. We obviously can do better, but there is diversity.
Yeah, all right. So I have a sheet, and it may be inaccurate, that under the departments that fall under your jurisdiction, and I'm not just picking on you.
Okay.
You just happen to be the person up here right now as I get this information. So under the various departments, it's under the Chief Administrative Office, executive staff, which is probably exempt, there's 22% minority and 78% white.
Hold on, let me just pull it up. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, 22%, yes. 20. Right.
So that clearly doesn't represent the demographics of the city.
Right. I mean, overall, I'm looking at staff demographics. 3 out of 9 executive staff members are minority, and I agree with you that doesn't.
Overall? So my numbers are incorrect?
Well, I'm trying to matching those.
And if my numbers are wrong.
You know what? The 22% of the total. That's of the 9. I think you're looking on page 9. That's the 2 men out of the 9 people, because we have fewer men than women in our office.
All right.
But it's still.
So you want to get me a more up-to-date or more accurate list?
It's sure. It's still at 33%. It's lower than the city, but.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'll come back.
Okay, great.
Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Council President, and good morning.
Good morning, Councilman.
Just 2 or 3 quick questions.
Sure.
And I'm not clear yet who the right person is to ask this question,
Okay.
but I'll ask it to you. I've only been in this position for, I think, 105 days so far. So from the public sector, coming from the private sector, one of my concerns in the public sector is the way everyone operates independently and nothing gets tied together from a computerization standpoint, and the equipment that we're using as a city of Philadelphia that seems super antiquated to me. And it seems like in the private sector, you would never tolerate this. You would have up-to-date information, which would make your goals easier to accomplish, by the way. And my question is it your department's responsibility to look at software that we can use as a city that ties revenue, finance, L&I together on a handheld device where we have access to information? That's one of the, so I'm not sure who the right person is, so I'm asking you that question.
Yes, that's my short answer. I think that what you're talking about is an IT software and application that ties together a few different departments, right? Finance, revenue, and L&I.
Well, really everything. I'm trying to look for a package that ties everything.
Right. So it would fall under my office in terms of bringing that together. And IT reports to the CAO, but then it's also the coordination with other departments. And I would like to say that IT does have a project called Alpha for our website to try to tie together so that a business owner, when going to the city's website in the future would be able to access and pay L&I permits at the same time as tax bills, et cetera. So it wouldn't be siloed by department.
And are we currently looking at what like other cities are using, whether it's Austin or New York or other markets, to see if they have software that we could adopt?
Yes, I believe that, the IT department, there's vendors constantly coming in to show what they have, and we do look at, what other cities use. I think part of it is even a challenge for governments, for us and for governments across the country, is that we probably need to bridge the gap better between the private sector and the public sector, because I think governments overall are behind with technology, and we might need to look outside of the governmental sphere in order to get the best practices we need.
Well, do you have people in your department who you can assign or look at the issue of I'm using Austin, Texas as an example, or what does New York use, and how could it apply to Philadelphia, that in 6 months from now we could say, you know what, there is a package out there. We've gone to 5 or 6 different locations. This could work for Philadelphia. This is the cost. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is the cost. This is how we implement it.
We could definitely look at it, and we could definitely work on it, yes.
Okay. And I'll come back to you with some more questions. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman O.
Thank you very much, Council President. So I'd like to congratulate you in your new position and
Thank
a
you.
new administration and a new day and all that.
Thank you very
So
much.
I had questions kind of on the same lines as Councilman Allen Dom. And they're not really questions, but just because you're new and you haven't really had a chance to do things. But I am very much interested in how you plan on integrating the technology that I think is critical to better services and more efficiency and cost savings, and making our services available more on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week basis. And I know it's a challenge because of the money, but I'm sure you're going to put a plan together. I would also like to say that I see that the administration is much more global in its perspective, which I appreciate. And there are some cities that have top-notch technology as part of the government services and the satisfaction that they provide to their citizens. And I would say that some of them, and many of them, are not in the U.S. So if you could take a look at, better systems and things like that. I have found it kind of frustrating, for example, bringing a company that would provide plexiglass screen doors between the riders and the subway tracks, better lighting and television monitors and all kind of things that we wouldn't have to pay for. They captured in advertising costs, but SEPTA already signed a contract with Titan. It is nowhere comparable to the safety, the air quality, of that type of thing. And I just, would not like to see what's what's the state of the art when it's not globally state of the art. Best practices in the world, that are tried and true and tested and everything. So we have had some issues in City Council. I had explained before that, I was trying to get a resume from one of my friends who's an attorney at Pepper. He's a lieutenant commander, Navy SEAL, and I found eventually that my emails and his emails, our emails were blocked, but nobody told me that. And so we didn't know kind of what was going on. When I was dealing with Korea, we tried to do some research, and the entire nation of Korea was blocked from access, and we kind of reported it, but couldn't get access. And I think it's just a reflection that if we had better technology, we could get a lot more work done. Citizens could interface with us better. How would you approach that?
Okay, I think there's a few questions in there.
Yes.
And the mention of Korea being blocked, I know that our CIO, Charlie Brennan, came to talk to you that South Korea is definitely not blocked, but...
I'm going to say again, it was blocked. He wasn't here at the time. It's a ridiculous thing. The
Okay.
entire country was blocked. The Korea Times, the newspapers. It's a democratic country in South Korea. We have a Hyundai Rotem. I got a lot of smart people, and when we can't get through to Korea, we can't get through. So what I said to him is, let's not argue about what I did and my staff did, who are all intelligent, have master's degree, graduated from Harvard, and Brown and all that. We could not get through because it
Okay.
said you can't get through. So that's not even worth arguing
Okay.
about.
So with that said, the state of our technology definitely needs improvements. And that is something that we're very focused on in this administration. One of the reasons that we're putting this big focus on it is because departments need to have better IT systems in order to operate better. And Charlie Brennan, the head of IT, is putting a lot of focus and energy onto making our systems work better. So it's a big priority, and we need to be better at it. And I think that's something that we're moving towards. I mean, there's various projects that are underway in IT to modernize systems.
Have you put a working group together? Are you thinking about putting, some of our best folks with, the IT head, but also reaching out to our private and academic sectors? I mean, what, and the challenges on, budget and all that, but do you have a working plan at this time?
A working plan to address IT needs?
Yes.
Is that what? So there is a plan in place that for IT to be reaching out to the departments to address need and then to prioritize need. There'll be a working group within the city established for that. We're also contemplating having an external working group to get some best practice advice from the private sector as we go through that.
Okay, fantastic. And I would just, say that I would hope that the city would take a leadership role with our authorities and even with some of our public utilities like our taxi cabs and, those type of entities. I'm always jealous when I look at Hong Kong and you take your phone out and you get a cab, a bus, a train, or
Right.
whatever you need, or you purchase an item, off of your smartphone. I wonder if we could look at those type of systems as well, and all the information's captured, and it's convenient that way. But if we don't push SEPTA, they have a much broader sense of what their responsibilities are, and sometimes they conflict with our interests.
Right. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and we do need to take the lead.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Council President. Ms. Rhynhart, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Councilman.
You were talking about, in response to the Council President's questions in reference to diversity and some of your goals, both from a personal perspective and administration's perspective, in reference to making sure you have a diverse staff within the agencies under your departments, under your umbrella. And diversity in reference to recruitment is important, but also in reference to retention. Can you talk about the perspective of trying to retain diverse employees within, although your office is new, for some of the departments that are under your umbrella?
Sure. I think that employee retention and employee promotion is a very important topic that we don't always do well as a city in terms of that there's room for improvement in our promotion and retention strategies. But I think that for minority employees as well as the larger employee pool, we want to promote growth opportunities for them, and I think we need to probably do that more. So it is something that we'll emphasize, and I'll emphasize within the departments that report up to me.
Okay. And also, earlier in the testimony, when the mayor's office testified in reference to the rebuild concept as well as universal, well, let me focus on rebuild. My understanding that the process of bringing in contractors for the rebuild project will go through a either new entity or an entity outside of procurement?
This falls under the managing director, but my understanding from that testimony and from conversations with them is that it would fall outside perhaps of the public property structure, yes. Okay. It would perhaps be through paid.
So it would not go through the traditional procurement structure?
I don't know if it wouldn't go through the traditional structure, but the word procurement, I'm not sure exactly how it would be configured at this point.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. I want to take a step back and get your professional and/or personal opinion on a couple of things. And I mean, it's clear that Mayor Kinney is leading by example, and that he has taken a very actionable, tangible step in appointing Mr. Nolan Atkinson as the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And so leadership, for sure, makes a difference when it comes to this big elephant known as diversity and inclusion. And in a city where, again, we were 44% African American, 13% Hispanic and Latino, 7% Asian, please tell me your philosophy. What is your view on diversity?
I think the city should represent, city's workforce should represent the diversity of the city. I think that we have improvements that need to be made. I think we need to do better. I think that we as an administration are taking steps towards that with the creation of the Chief Diversity Officer, with the work that our office, the CAO's office, is doing with the diversity officer. And I did mention Pew. I know that Pew Charitable Trust, before you walked in, that they've been brought on board to do a study over the next year on what changes we need to make, both in our practices and in regulation and perhaps even in city code, to establish modern best practices to create a more diverse workforce. So, and then we plan to implement on those. So, I guess in a nutshell, I view it as very important, and I think we have work to do.
Do you think that it matters?
I think absolutely it matters.
Why does it matter?
It matters because the city represents, the workforce of the city represents the people of the city, and therefore should look like and understand the community.
And so with that said, how many professionals report to you that are civil service?
Directly report to me, it's just exempt. Like, you're talking about within all the departments?
Yes, I want to separate it out.
Okay, I could get that. I don't have that with me.
Can someone get that now during this hearing?
I think so. Can we get that? We can try, yes.
How many exempt staff report to you?
Are you talking about in all the departments?
All
then
of those
we'll get that as well.
All of those departments that report to you.
Okay, we'll get that for you as well.
Okay. And then of the exempt staff, I would like to see it broken down demographically. All those departments that report to you.
Broken down demographically. Okay, yes.
Okay. In looking at this chart here, public property procurement fleet, OIT, and CAO, define minority as is depicted on this chart.
I'm sorry, what chart are you? Are you looking in the CAO testimony?
That's our chart, not ours. Got it. So, first of all, define minority for me, in your view.
Well, I'm sure there's an official definition, but minority would be African American, Hispanic, Asian, anything other than white, Caucasian.
Okay. And so based on the homework done by our offices, in procurement, well, in public property, there are no people of color in an executive position.
I think that the Public Property Commissioner, you might want to address that directly.
Does she report to you?
She does, yes.
Okay.
And I think that might get to some of the challenges with people coming from the trades backgrounds. But
Forgive me, what did you say?
It might speak to some of the challenges in that industry, in public property and trades, construction, but absolutely there's work to do there.
In Fleet, there are no women. Does Fleet report to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Help me understand why we have to go to an outside external authority. Are they doing this free to the city?
Yes,
or we-
they're free. It's free.
Okay, so help me understand why we have to go to a third party to help us in government, where we have very smart people, figure it out.
I think there's some steps we can take on our own, and keep in mind that the structure is new. So this structure and the departments reporting up to the CAO is only a few months, in the making, right? So we're just starting to look at all this in this administration to take next steps. But there are certain things that we can do within an administration.
Such as?
I think we can look at recruiting. I think that's an emphasis that we've started within CAO. We've established a new unit, a new function called HR and Talent, which is going to focus on recruitment and training, two areas that are sorely needed here. And Jackie Linton, who's here today as Deputy CAO, is going to be leading that effort. And one of the big emphasis on that will be on recruiting, and often we don't have good enough recruiting to recruit the candidates, minority candidates, to fill those roles. So we need to get better at that. And that's one of the ways that we're going about that right now. And I'm sure she'd be happy to come up and talk to you about some of her strategy.
Does she report to you?
She does, yes. Would you like her to come up and?
Please.
Sure.
And Ms. Rhynhart,
Yes.
is it possible that Mr. Atkinson can come,
Sure, we'll contact
since
him.
he's the person that you've indicated that you talked to
Okay,
as it relates to that?
we're calling him now.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jackie Linton, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Human Resources and Talent.
The bell has rung, but I will ask you to please brief us briefly, because the bell has rung, on what 1, 2, 3 priorities you have to achieve between now and June.
Sure. So one of the first things we're trying to do is to understand the current landscape.
Please speak into the mic.
Oh, sorry. One of the first things that we're trying to do is to understand the current landscape, like what is represented in the city right now from a number of perspectives: exempt, non-exempt, civil service, department by department. So we've kind of put together a number of different views of the way the city population currently looks. So once we kind of know where there are big pockets, then we want to go and find out why. One of the other things that we're doing is we're going to be doing an employee engagement survey that will include some diversity-related questions so that we can better understand what it looks and feels like for a diverse employee in the city and what kinds of environmental things there may be that impact our ability to attract and retain diverse employees. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we're going to be doing this summer. And then finally, we want to make sure that we target those departments where there are opportunities and where there is a need. You know, some of them are because we have certain practices that we can't change in the short term. So we really want to focus our efforts on those things that we can do, sooner rather than later, mm-hmm. so that we can have as much of an impact as we can.
Mm-hmm. Are you civil service or exempt?
I'm exempt.
Okay. So before this hearing is over, I would like to have that demographic information. Ms. Rhynhart.
Yeah, it's being worked on right now.
Terrific. And I'll wait to the next round. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right. Chair recognizes Councilman Henon.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning.
Good morning, Councilman.
I got to say for the record that I have list of questions to ask, and I'm going to ask them, but I'm excited about the new role.
Great.
And I think it's an actual positive change, and I think it's critical to the success of delivering efficiencies if it's executed. And I think that's what we all struggle with council is the execution of programs and systems and communications. But I'm excited about it and look forward to the execution of it.
Great.
So let me get into some of the questions that I have. Can you explain the differences in responsibilities between the procurement and the contracting unit, and typically the challenges that each office faces when trying to resolve the length of time between a contract and when the contract is awarded and the RFP process?
Sure. So the contracting unit previously reported to finance. That unit, contracting, does professional services. So by having it report to me now, both procurement, which handles the bidding processes for public works and supplies, SS&E, is reporting to me, and also the professional services contracting is reporting to me. So that's the difference in terms of what they do. In terms of the challenges they face, and can you repeat the challenges specifically? What was it related to?
Well,
challenges
just
in
the
general?
typical challenges that face the office when trying to resolve the length of time between
Absolutely.
when the city executes the contract and when its RFP is initially issued.
So that's a very good question, and it's a big issue. So it currently takes a long time. We have a working group right now that's been working on reducing the length of time. So under procurement, it has gone down, I believe, by about 20 or so days in the last few months. So we've been working on reducing that by doing things such as looking at the processes, and some things are as simple as, a contract being mailed before by snail mail now goes by email, saving 15 days, that type of thing. So we're going through those processes to look at what could shorten the time.
Are they on the same system, those two offices?
Well, it's interesting. No, they're not. But procurement currently is paper-based.
I mean, they should
in terms of
be
bidding.
on the same system, correct?
I think a best practice, without knowing the specifics of it, yes. I think we've had several studies come to tell us that a best practice would be to have the functions combined as well. So that's something that we're looking at, functions and the system.
Well, especially with the crossover of the data information and
Right.
the sharing of the information. So
Yeah.
were you saying that the one office still operates with paper
So procurement,
and procurement?
it's changing, but procurement currently does all of its bidding by paper. So, yes. But we're changing that. There's going to be an
By
e-procurement
paper.
system.
Can we go all the way back to 2000 presidential election and say hanging chads? We still have hanging chads in our city's
Look,
procurement
we're trying
office?
to make progress. We're going forward. We're going forward. So it is paper-based, but we are moving with the e-procurement system over the next year. We'll be moving to an actual system where vendors will be able to submit bids online. This doesn't sound revolutionary, obviously, but right now they're submitting either by walking into our office or by faxing it in. So if you think about the billions of dollars of business we do, this is important. And
It's very important.
it will, we'll have this system up and running, though, within 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months. All right.
You can hold me to
I'm going to mark that down.
You can do that.
Okay. What are the other functions that the staff works on in the contracts unit serve, if not solely focus on contracts themselves?
Well, they're focused on both. They're focused on the contracts, but also the implementation of 17400. I don't want to be messing this up right now. 17400. 17400. Sorry about that. Of the code. So it's about contributions and other legal requirements in terms of who's eligible for bidding, and they have to look at that as well.
Do you think it would make sense to consolidate the two offices so that it'd be easier? I mean, just as you had mentioned, you made a statement that it's easier for vendors to, points of contact and, for workflow instead of having them separated?
I think there's a good argument to be made, and that's something that I'm looking at right now.
All right. On page 5 of your testimony, there is a breakdown of the performance measures of the contracts legislation unit.
Yeah.
What specific steps are we taking to increase the competition between vendors and to move the average vendor response time, from 5 per FRP to the goal of 8?
On the RFPs to move from...
Or the RFP.
Right, to move from 5 to 8. I think, and I don't know if T. David has anything to add to this. Is he here? Okay, yeah. I'll have T. David speak to that in terms of...
Okay.
And then there's also the issue of the what we're doing on the procurement side, which I could address too.
Okay.
Good morning, Council President, members of City Council. My name is T. David Williams. I'm a Deputy Director of Finance, and I am the Director of the Contracts Legislation Unit, which we refer to as the Professional Services Unit. I'm sorry. One of the things that a couple of things that we're doing in regard to increasing or attempting to increase the number of vendors that respond to those opportunities is working, one of the things we do constantly is work with departments to make sure that the RFPs that they are putting out are clear, have defined goals, defined scope of work so that the vendors can understand it. The second thing that we do, we work with Ms. Angela Dowd Burton with her doing business with the city, and we present there along with procurement and other departments. And then another specific thing that we're doing, we have a system that we just installed probably within the past 8 months called e-notification. And that system is triggered by some of the requirements in Chapter 17, 1400 of the Code, and we take those email notifications and we now allow vendors who are registered on eContract Philly to sign up and to receive e-notifications. What that system does is it gives them an email every single day that tells them if an RFP has posted, gives them a description of the RFP, gives them the department, gives them the time that the RFP is opening and closing, and then allows them to click right on the link in the email and go right to the opportunity details for that RFP. And then from that point, they can begin to complete their application. When we started, we had probably about 1,000 vendors that signed up. We recently did an email blast, and that, as a result of that blast, or I should say, within a couple of days of sending that blast out, we increased to about 1,300. Since then, one of the things that we've been doing, we have sent that blast out to a couple of the various chambers. So the Hispanic Chamber, the Asian American Chamber, the Filipino American Chamber. We've sent that blast out to the LGBT Chamber and the African American Chamber. And then we're working with OEO and Ms. Angela Dowd Burton to make sure that that blast also goes out to her list of women and minority-owned businesses who are registered and certified with her.
So was there, Council President, is just a subset to that question, all right? And then I'll turn it over for the next round. So is there like a lack of information flow to the prospective contract or to the prospective contractors, and how do we reach this? I mean, you just answered some of it, right? I mean, a part of it with the email. In addition to reaching out via email to the prospective chambers and their constituency, are there other ways to communicate so we can have a better information flow for the vendors and give them opportunities to bid on procurements?
Okay, so the other way I did mention was working with, doing business with Philadelphia with Ms. Dowd Burton, and then Ms. Rhynhart and Commissioner Day actually had a in-person meeting with the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and we could surely continue those meetings with the other chambers of commerce. And one that I forgot to mention, the Greater Northeast Chamber is also one that we reached out to.
Great.
So-
Well, I appreciate that. So thank you. I mean, so you are taking steps, and you're going to refine it as we go along. And you can see the measurements, right? And I think that's what you're ultimately trying to accomplish, right?
Yes.
You know, more people access via communication, the correct information, the proper information.
Correct.
In more of an electronic way.
Right. And one of the other thing that we encourage departments to do when the RFP posts on eContract Philly is to then take that posting and email to vendors that they may know that are interested. So that's just another route to get the information out.
Well, my last suggestion is please communicate with and you have with my office when it would, and a few other members that I know with procurement, but it's been an issue, I think, of this body, making sure that, the communities and the businesses that we come across and the groups disseminate the information, properly and efficiently. So if you could communicate with the council president's office and
Definitely.
continue to communicate with council members here to help you, reach out to vendors and opportunities.
And I think we're happy to go with you and meet your vendors if vendors in your areas, if that's helpful.
It will be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Council President. In the testimony that you provided,
Yes.
you talked about Performance Philly.
Sure.
And I'm just wondering what you think the timeline is for the implementation of that program and when it might go live and be usable.
Okay, great. I'll have Lisa Rodriguez, who's the deputy in charge of Performance Philly, to come up here.
Good morning. Lisa Rodriguez, Director of Performance Management. Can you please repeat the question?
Sure. The question is, you have a new program called Performance Philly. What do you think the timeline is for the implementation of this program? When will it go live and be usable?
So we want to do a few test sessions this summer, June and July, with some programs and departments. We're going to do a lot of preparation with them and support, not just sort of developing the data, but also the facilitation of the conversation. So in the fall, meaning between September and December, it should be already in a cycle. We hope to have additional sessions there, between September and December that are, already formal, not test sessions. And then we'll have actually a schedule in calendar year 2017 of the different programs and areas that we'll be focusing on.
That also relates to the e-procurement system and the electronic document retention for city departments. You have an idea when that implementation will occur?
So the e-procurement, those are different areas. The e-procurement system, and that's what I had mentioned to Councilman Henon, is about 6 to 9 months, rough estimate. Records, we have a brand new records commissioner, Jim Leonard. Joan Decker retired about 2 weeks ago. So we're just starting to look at how best to look at going to electronic record retention. I don't know if you've ever been down to the records storage facility at Drexel's campus, but it is a lot of paper, and we're trying to move away from that.
One last question for now. I'm not sure if this is in your department or not, but I feel like the city should have a how-to for all different businesses that want to open in the city. Mm-hmm. How to open a restaurant, all the steps to do it. How to open a law firm, all the steps to do it. How to do anything. How to open a dental office in the city. How to open a supermarket. How to open a grocery store. Whatever it is. Is that in conjunction with commerce? But if we had a website where you could just click on how to, and you go to that and you find out all the forms you need, all the rules you have to follow, and all the detail. Is that something that we could?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll look into that and talk to the Commerce Director about it.
There's somebody who used to work here before. I think her name's Allie Perlman. Mm-hmm. You may want to contact her because I think she has a lot of that information.
Okay, great.
Okay,
definitely.
thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gim.
Hi, very much. Hello, Ms. Rhynhart.
Oh, good morning.
I wanted to join my voice with other council members who've also raised concerns about issues of disparity, racial disparity within not only the departments that are under your control in particular, but also overall. And I'm wondering, like, if you have any types of measures or an approach that will help track and analyze, progress in this area for the coming year.
I think at this point we've been collecting the data and then the performance in terms of if any of our ratios have moved for minorities in executive staff or anything like that. That's something that we'll be working on. So not there yet, but definitely we'll be working on that. And be happy to talk to you more about it.
Sure. And I think, the important thing is that the city does have a ton of data, and what we're not seeing as much of is an ability to utilize it and analyze it to the purposes for which data is collected.
Right.
And if there's a way in particular that you can be documenting trends within departments or particular areas, highlighting or flagging things for departments that are needing to see improvement. I think that in this particular area, a lot of people do need some advice on how to make this happen, and to the extent that those of us on council can be supportive in that, I think that's also extremely important.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The other area, again, to emphasize that I think a lot of us on council are very concerned about what we're seeing in terms of both disparity in terms of hiring, but also in terms of wages. And I do think we're going to need some strong guidance and some strong and clear performance measures on how departments can and have to improve in order to move forward. Okay, that's something
we can work with you on that.
I'll follow up on my colleague's question about Performance Philly, and in particular about how you'll be working with the Office of Immigrant Affairs to ensure that the language access mandate is being met by all the different departments.
Okay.
Hello.
Lisa Rodriguez. I'm glad you asked that question because we actually we started working with them last week. They have a draft plan, language access plan, and we've already identified some draft measures for the first year. And so we're going to help them put a document together. So we've already started collaborating with that office on sort of defining the short-term and long-term goals, and then identifying measures that are intermediate and then longer term.
I think what I'm also interested in not only defining goals, but how you're tracking departments to see whether and how they're actually implementing the language access mandate.
So that we don't have the details on that yet, but that's part of the measurement plan. So each department's going to be putting a plan together, and the Office of Immigrant Affairs has already developed a template, and that's going to be shared with departments very soon. It hasn't been requested yet, and then the format of that plan is they're going to be pulling data from those plans, at least for the first year, to create kind of like a comprehensive picture. So the data is going to come from departments, but the details about how we're going to measure each department versus the larger goals, we're still working on that.
And do you have a timeline for when the departments are supposed to submit the plans to
So
you?
it's going to be probably like 8 weeks from the time they receive the request, something like that.
Okay, great. And, would love to also continue to work with you on that.
Yes,
One
absolutely.
thing that became clear yesterday is it's not entirely clear that a lot of departments understand how to use language line, and I think that that's a very essential, important, and very easy start to all of this.
Yes, and one of the components of the process is going to be training that the Office of Immigrant Affairs is going to provide to the departments, and having a language access coordinator in each department. That's going to be like a senior level language access coordinator. And so that person, and in CAO, that's going to be me. So that person is going to be working very closely with the Office of Immigrant Affairs to make sure that the training is provided, scheduling, all those things.
And to the extent that, your office, it seems like OIA should be involved heavily with training, goal setting, advice, and and all of that, but it seems like your office Performance Philly might be involved with monitoring, reviewing, analyzing data. And one of the things that I think is strong about Language Line is that it'll be very clear and evident about which departments actually use it,
Yes.
what languages they use it for, and which ones actually never.
Yes, because
Never
they
use
actually
it.
already generate reports. So Language Line is a great tool because it's a great tool to use, but also because it collects data behind it.
One other thing that our office introduced legislation earlier this year that would require reporting and tracking of our economic development subsidy programs, and in particular to make sure that we're tracking jobs and how the subsidies actually result in jobs to residents here and quality jobs in particular. And a key component of that bill is going to be able to ensure that there's an online interface that allows for the public to actually easily access the information and for the public to be able to view it. So one of the questions that I had was whether our office could work with Performance Philly to make sure and review the legislation that we're proposing so that it can work in the best practices of performance management, and also to ensure that, you know, again, we really do want this to be very easily accessible to the public. They should be able to input an address or the name of a company, understand how much subsidies they receive, the types of jobs that were created as a result, and a number of details about the types of jobs that came out of the economic subsidy.
No, that would be great. We would love to work with you. And then I guess it's the Commerce Department, the other department? Oh, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've heard the conversation with regard to the immigrant community, and I always say this. 11 years ago, we started the Mayor's Commission of African and Caribbean Immigrant Affairs. 20 years ago, we started Echoes of Africa. We represent 35 countries from Africa and the Caribbean. We deal with everything. We had the Cameroonians in for 45 days. They just went back, I guess, Monday. And we have a lot of, we have people who speak the languages, people who have weekend programs. We're involved in the mayor's soccer program. We're there. So all you all have to do is just use us. And what in exchange we want is our flags on the parkway that I keep talking about, hopefully, before the Democratic National Convention. It's embarrassing when people come and don't see their flags. Many have worn off, blown off, and we only had maybe 6 or 8 more. But they usually change them a couple times a year, make sure they're cleaned up. But really, that should not be something that's so difficult to get done. So that's my statement on the immigrant community. And also, I'll wait for you on another community meeting we're working on for the community center.
Oh, okay.
So I will leave that be. You know what that is. And the last thing I want to mention is that everybody knows about the big projects, the $3.9 billion, which is just one project I got in West and Southwest. I'm trying to keep up with the president and North Philly, but I'm just doing the best I can. And you know, they have. I remember the years when we talked about 20-year plans, maybe 30-year, but we heard yesterday about a 60-year plan for out there. And what I'm saying is that as we live and work hard at these projects, we have to have a system where we check what the work is. You know, we talk about it, but the city's job is not just to create programs, projects, work with the private community, government programs, but it is this issue of monitoring to make sure that the citizens who vote for us know that they have a chance at these programs, to work there, to be involved in opening offices there, to have a bite at legitimate homes so that they don't just feel that they're being gentrified as they do. So we've got to do it all at one time, and if we don't do it, we're not going to be successful, and our city won't survive in the way we're trying to go. We can't just deal with it from development narrowly and see all retail and commercial investments and industrial stuff, but we've got to deal with it from the everyday John and Jane Q public who want to be involved. So I raise that issue again. I know I've said it many times. At least, colleagues, you can't say I mentioned the water department. I didn't yet. I didn't talk about all those people, 34 at our last count, who haven't been, the number goes up, who have not been taken care of on North 52nd Street. So I just slid that in. But these are the issues that affect me and that I think affect our city and all of us directly or indirectly. So we'll hope that you will. We appreciate you. I know that you're sincere and you're trying to help our city the best you can. And I only ask you to be involved in those 5 things up front. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm done.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Kiona Sanchez.
Thank you. Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
One of the things I'd like for you to articulate for me, particularly on this performance Philly, is how is this going to help to get us to the zero-based budgeting piece? How is this going to help generate the direction that we're moving into?
Mm-hmm. I would say that Performance Philly is a program to use performance measures to assist in accountability. So right now, we're going through a process under Lisa, who spoke earlier, Lisa Rodriguez, that we're looking at all of the department's performance measures to see which ones are the best performance measures. In zero program-based budgeting, there's many names, and basically what it is it's saying what services does each department provide, and then attaching that to performance measures. What service does it provide? What service does, for example, the streets department provide? And then what performance measures best judge the performance of that service? So it will assist and go also hand in hand. So it will assist in the move towards program-based budgeting by establishing the best, most accurate outcome-based performance measures. It also, though, will be, in addition to the budgeting change, it will be a change in a program to ensure accountability. So the way we see it is departments and programs will have a meeting where their recent performance measures are discussed, and we can work with a department to identify the problems that they are having and what they need to get better.
And then how is this going to interface with 311, which is the most frustrating part of some of this?
That's a good question, and I have a meeting coming up with the new director of 311 to talk about that. I think at this point it might be a little bit premature for me to answer it, but it's something that's definitely on our radar.
Yeah, I think it's important that we put that at the front end, because ultimately, we want to get to a place where our budgeting is based on needs, that is based on responses to the interfacing that we're doing with our customers, which are the residents.
Absolutely.
So we should kind of put that in the front end, because one of the things that we're really interested in seeing is, because of the frustration, is sort of like, what does it cost, to do the things that people are asking for? Are we budgeting for 14,000 potholes when we have 20?
Right.
And how do you get there? And then how do you incentivize departments to want to fully cooperate and be honest about what we need to do, so that it's not just a tool, it's a tool for accountability, but that there's an incentive to get people to become more efficient and effective. You know what I mean?
I do.
So I'm interested in that. So I just want to make sure that this doesn't act as a silo to all of the other things that the administration wants to do moving forward.
Right.
So from the very beginning, that's kind of connected. Obviously, for me, that's important and systematically, because on the language access piece, I really want to see departments in their budgets reflect their responsibility. I don't want to see language access get regulated to an isolated office. I
Right.
think departments need to be held accountable, and they need to have a plan that's reflected in their budget. Because if they don't feel it and measure it, then they're not going to own it. And
Right.
and the reason you see the disparity about the utilization, whether it's language line is because up to now it's been an isolated source. So to me, if we're committed to following the law, which requires a plan in June, then it has to be reflected in every department. So this has to help people build that in and what it looks. And again, not being punitive, how you incentivize people to do the right thing, to be inclusive in that way. You know, because I don't want people to say, you know, now I'm responsible for something else. There has to be an incentive, a hook to get it, notwithstanding that it's the law.
Right. And it's also about providing the best customer service.
Right.
And to provide the best customer service as a city, we need to make things accessible in more than one language. So.
Yeah, and particularly since you have this new structure allows you to look at some of the key components around HR and hiring practices, because again, you know, the great thing about data is not what you say, is what you do.
Right.
And so people say it, but if the numbers don't reflect that, then, you know, at some point it's going to catch up to you. You know, first year budget is one thing, second year is a totally different thing.
Right.
So I'm interested in seeing kind of the connections to that. I have some other questions around procurement and stuff, but I just wanted to make sure, because I think this is an important tool to get us to those things, and I want to make sure we put some of these things in the front end of some of this stuff.
I think so. And just to add one thing, we are going to be conducting a citizen survey. So that's something that will also be used to inform where we're doing a good job as a city and where we're not.
Yeah, and I think the data, again, we have different systems. Every department is doing their data systems, you know, really figuring out early on how some of those things interface in a way that can allow us to be more proactive. It's a challenge. I mean, I see it as we work on Eclipse at LNI, and, you know, you don't want Eclipse to be an enhanced version of Hanson. You really want Eclipse to do what it has the capacity to do, that we're investing in the front end for that data sharing that we need, as opposed to then like building out systems, you know, and then backtracking to where we want to go, which is eventually performance-based budgeting or whatever you want, the newer term is.
The newer term, right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Taltenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I am a freshman and may make an error, but I think I understand. The contracts for DHS, they would come under somehow you at some point?
Right. The contracts for DHS would go through a contracting process. So yes, go through the contracting unit.
And the ones I'm specifically interested in are the ones for nonprofits to manage the day-to-day care of foster children.
Okay.
And my question to you is, why do these contracts last only for 1 year when these types of services usually require contracts for longer periods of time?
Okay. I think.
And you can get back to me on this if you.
I mean, I can answer it generally that contracts. I hear what you're saying though about foster care. Maybe I could get back to you on that.
I would like that.
Yeah.
And let me fill you in on the second part of this.
Sure.
So you're prepared for the larger scope and explains. Unfortunately, we've heard that some of these contracts take 4 months or so to be renewed, thus leaving these nonprofits who many times have difficulty. I worked for a nonprofit, and making budget in 4 months without income can be very difficult. Taking 4 months to cover costs for that time, and basically, I'd like to know from your department, when you can answer this to the full committee, is what steps are being taken to address the length of time of these contracts, unless I am in error and have been told wrong. But I have heard that the procurement process on renewal takes up to 4 months.
That doesn't surprise me. It's a problem.
Okay.
I would say, and this isn't just a DHS contract issue, this is a citywide contracting issue, that it takes way too long to establish a contract or renew a contract. So we are reviewing that right now. It is not just, it's a cross-departmental issue that it's sort of like unpeeling an onion to fix it.
Okay.
And we are doing that. So obviously, it's a big problem, and it's something that in the outreach that I've done since being here in my role, business after business has said, I can't do business with, the reason I don't respond, it's especially small businesses, minority, women-owned, local businesses.
Sure.
They say, I don't respond to, I can't do city business because the city doesn't pay me fast enough. And the reason the city doesn't pay fast enough is because the city doesn't contract fast enough. And that's something that, if we're going to really increase competition and increase local business, minority, women-owned businesses,
Right.
and also just be a better run business as the city,
yeah, yep.
we need to fix that. So that's something that we are actively working on right now.
I thank you for that answer, but I would still ask you to take a look at the DHS contracts.
Yes, we will.
Because you're talking about foster children, and you're talking about nonprofits that have a small scope of budget. A couple months can hurt them greatly. And the second part of that is, I don't think any of those contractors want to turn these children away. I mean, these are children in need and have difficulty in their lives.
Absolutely.
We don't want our bureaucracy getting into their lives any worse than they already have it.
I 100% agree with you.
And that is the scope of my question.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm finished, and Ms. Rhynhart, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Thank you. I wanted to get some additional detail regarding the Pew study. When is the anticipated start date or kickoff for that effort?
Let me have Jackie Linton, the Deputy CAO, come up on that, since she'll be leading that.
Okay.
Good morning again. So the Pew study, we will actually be sending Pew the data to begin their study this week. The data will be sent over a period of time based on how easily it is to be able to be collected out of the system, and they'll begin their work immediately. The goal is for them to give us updates throughout the process on specific areas that they discover, rather than waiting until the end of the survey, the end of the study, to give us all of the information. So we'll be getting information along the way.
Okay. And what's the end date?
So the study is expected to last about a year.
So that means April 1, that means May 1, that means June 1. What does that mean?
Of 2017?
I'm asking you.
You mean as an end date?
Yes.
Yes. So we have not established an end date because, it's based on when the project actually starts.
Oh, okay.
So now that we've gotten the contract signed and we're beginning the work, it's expected to be about a year from now.
Okay. All right, then. That's helpful. By way, a point of information as a follow-up to Councilman Dom's brilliant suggestion to create a self-help website for different types of businesses. Just by way of information, L&I used to have a child care unit, if you will, where that type of information was available all in one place. It was like a one-stop shop for child care providers, which was came out of my office with a recommendation at least 15 years ago. More recently, that child care unit has been disbanded. But it was brilliant in that child care providers could go one place and find out what all of the regulations and licensees were required to start up and operate a child care business. So the idea to examine the value of that for other industries is brilliant, and one that, A, you should be aware of that type of practice existed in L&I, and B, if we're serious about wanting to grow our neighborhood corridors and the like, that might be something worth examining. But it was exceedingly useful to child care providers for the time that it was in place.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I share that with you by way of information. 2011, 2012, I did a lot of homework on women on boards, and so the interest in diversity and inclusion stems from a lot of study, having read a lot of data and the like. And ultimately, as a result of that study, homework I'll call it, in 2013 we were successful in getting a Women on Boards bill passed, signed by the mayor, which essentially said if you want to do business with the city of Philadelphia, You now have to provide demographics of your board, and if your board in many ways does not look like Philadelphia, then the chances of that particular effort being executed or authorized by council is unlikely. And then November of 2014, that law was actually tested because the developer wanted to build a brand new hotel in Councilman Kenyatta Johnson's district. He showed up here with documents. Councilman Good and I looked back to the exhibit section where the question is now asked, what does your board look like? What do you think the answer was?
It was not diverse. It didn't have any
There
women.
were no women,
Yeah.
and there were no people of color.
Right.
So that effort went nowhere. And so the reason why I share the backstory is because the research in my homework I learned also based on research of boards across the country. When you have diverse boards, you actually get different and oftentimes better decisions. And so that's why it matters to us that we have a city, particularly those in leadership and executive positions that look like the city of Philadelphia. And so with that, I need to know of your staffers who are here, with the Kenny's appointees aside, have them stand so I can see who they are.
You want my staff to stand
Yes.
up? Okay. Stand up if you're part of the CAO.
Direct reports.
I have a
And
lot
so
of
that's
women.
quite encouraging. I see no African American men.
Oh. Right there, see David.
That's encouraging. And these are direct reports?
Yes.
Only the professionals?
Yes.
All professionals?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Know that we will be looking forward to the final report from Pew, and the ask or the expectation would be that members of council get a copy of that report at whatever time Pew is ready to release it.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think the bell rung.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I know we're going to hear from procurement about the e-procurement system when they come up, and we'll hear from public property about their new work on their work order system, and that's all great news. All the systems we need to modernize before they become absolutely obsolete. So I think that's important. So how are we working towards integrating the systems?
Integrating the systems so that they talk to one another.
Correct. So like any piece of data that one department has about business or a person or a parcel or a land or another use of so it's like that data sharing systems with Office of Property Data and and some of the other information offices that we have in systems that are shared, so we get a profile, and breaking down some of the the separate and solo systems.
Okay, I'll have Charlie Brennan answer that.
I'm Charlie Brennan. I'm the CIO, Councilman. In every system that we build now, actually what makes them so hard now is all the interfaces that are required. So every system for which we start a project, what we look for is what feeds it and what it has to feed to. So that's actually part of the RFP process, and it's written in for the vendor to have to build those interfaces. So, and you kind of hit on the one of them is the financial systems tend to be the oldest ones. Probably the next round of capital funding, they'll be targeted to be replaced because many of them are like 30 years old. A lot of the things that we're concentrating now are a lot of the public safety systems are kind of front and center, and they all have really complicated interfaces, and really that's what drives a lot of the cost in the project.
Okay, so I mean, it seems to me, it seems to me that we should be moving towards a maximum of two systems, one based on people and one based on land. So are we in a position to orchestrate that, even if the plan comes to with a cost?
Are you speaking specifically about the camera project?
Well, about the data departments on the business end of it, the land end of it, the just useful information
Right.
that you can share with, separating, the land, the profile of the land and the profile of a person. This way, we're maximizing, only having or working towards two systems as opposed to.
No, I think you have a really good point, and it's actually shared more than you would believe, because a lot of the information is pulled off and used in other applications. For example, our GIS work with geographic information systems and mapping uses a lot of that stuff, and we are very intimately involved in using the land and the parcel records for other uses. So, even in the older systems, what we do that don't have those interfaces, we kind of yank the information off and use it. So, but in the new systems, we actually build it in so it's already there for everybody. So your point is well taken.
Good, and I hope we can work towards that, and maybe it'd be something in the capital, moving forward. A new creative idea from, moving ourselves, to where we need to be.
Yes, sir.
To effectively, deliver services quicker and more efficient. Rebecca, in the performance measure in your testimony, you stated that there will be a review, streamline, and refine current performance measures and integrate them into a single reporting system. How often would you see, or would you imagine that this would be, this analysis will be conducted? Is it only annual?
No,
because I think it's a good idea, and will council get reviews, before the budget process?
In terms of performance measures being updated, our goal was to do it monthly.
Okay, well, that's
Right now, we do it quarterly, and we want to move to more.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Lisa Rodriguez, Director of Performance Management. Right now, we can get the measures quarterly, but we want to move to a monthly reporting system. And we will be testing some sort of internal dashboards in the summer, early fall, to see how that monthly reporting is going.
No, that's great. Will the centralized reporting system be developed in regular reports to council, or will we have access to the data to review in the department progress?
So I think after we do some tests to make sure that the display, the information, the data is coming, is being illustrated appropriately, we would be able to share sort of the reports in a useful and accessible way with council.
Okay, great. And how are we going to ensure that all the offices of offices that come in front of City Council, including the independent offices and agencies, have a standardized performance measures, including in their budget testimony?
I think for performance measures, we are going through a process with all departments to make sure that their performance measures are the best ones possible. In terms of the elected officials or the separately electeds, we are happy to have them participate. I don't think we have the same, force that we would have with our own departments to say we need to do this, but if they want to, we will absolutely reach out to them.
Great. And lastly, for me, what is the projected cost of the proposed annual citizen survey when it's related to the city services and customer needs?
It's about $30,000.
And how many people are we planning to interact with?
So we want to get, in typical surveys that are done in cities about the size of Philadelphia, having our responses between 800 and 1,000 responses is a statistically valid sample. So that's what we're aiming for.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to turn the questioning over to Council President. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Real quick, I'm going to have to run over to the veterans event in a second, but while I'm here, see Mr. Atkinson is in the room now. I had a couple of questions with respect to your early responses relating to leaning on Mr. Atkinson's expertise with respect to staffing. Good morning,
Council President.
Good morning.
Nolan Atkinson.
I'm sorry.
I just gave my name for the record.
It's all good. Had an earlier conversation with Ms. Rhynhart with respects to the exempt positions in executive staff, and we were discussing the demographics, the racial demographics as it relates, as compared to the demographics of the city. And I think there was an acknowledgement that, quote unquote, we have to do better. And your name came up in the conversation as a person that I guess not only this particular office, but the administration was going to lean on in terms of identifying people. I asked specifically about exempt, i.e. non-civil service jobs, because you don't have to go through a lengthy process. Essentially, you just hire somebody, right, who you believe to be qualified and meet other standards as it relates to the job. So from your perspective, one, what has been your interaction with this department and other departments as it relates, well, I'll talk about this department as it relates to the hiring practices of this particular jurisdictional template, chief administrative office, and then all of the subsequent offices that fall under that particular jurisdiction.
Thank you, Councilman. When we came into office, I came in the office in January, my first assignment was to take a snapshot of the existing metrics of the various departments. That actually took place on or about February 4th, I believe, the figures that I got. By that time, staffing had been done on a number of departments. I was not and have not been involved in the staffing of any individual department. I always look at diversity and inclusion as a macro kind of responsibility as opposed to a responsibility that applies to individual positions, but certainly the measurements will be determined at the end of a period of time. So my goal is to get the metrics for all of the departments to begin to figure out what departments we need to really work with to improve the racial and gender metrics as well as ethnic metrics and begin doing that. And as I testified earlier in this process, our goal is to give a transparent document by the end of this calendar year which says what our metrics look like and beginning to work with addressing areas that need change.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like to me that you didn't really have an opportunity to interact with this particular office as it related to staffing because that particular department had been staffed up by the time you got here and got settled.
That's correct, sir.
All right. So, Ms. Rhynhart, in your earlier testimony, you indicated that you were working with Mr. Atkinson's office.
Yes.
So
we're working.
Does that mean in the future?
Right. We're working together quite closely, actually.
Very closely.
Yeah. To talk about next steps and going forward, what are the best ways to increase diversity? And I know that Nolan has been working on a work plan that he's going to identify several departments to focus on within the city, and then use those as examples to put out best practices. So I think that when I was referring to working with the Nolan Atkinson, Chief Diversity Officer, it was about how to increase the diversity within the city and how to tackle the issue.
So how would you do that once you've already staffed up?
Because staffing is a continual. Staffing, people leave, we have to establish promotional opportunities. People are going to be retiring. A lot of people will be retiring over the next few years. So this is not sort of something that's done at any point of time. It's something that we have to continually strive towards.
So there was no thought to that when you hired the first level of staff?
Well, there was thought, and there is diversity in the staff.
It's got 22%.
No, the diversity is of full-time staff is 28 out of 45, executive is 3 of 9. I admit.
Across the board? Across all of the departments?
No. Across all the departments, we now have that information. If you want, Jackie can come up and give that. But I guess what I would say is that there was thought given to it. But could we do better? Of course. We could always do better.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
So in response to Councilwoman Reynolds Brown's question earlier, we've been feverishly trying to put together the numbers in the way that she had asked for it. So I would just preface this by saying this information we put together by hand in the last few minutes. But in the CAO office, there's a total of 45 employees. 28 of them are minority, which is 62%, while 17...
Are they all of 45 exempt?
No.
All right, I'm only asking about exempt because you have direct opportunity to hire who you want. Civil service employees, that's a process, the whole nine. I'm talking about exempt executive staff because that's where you have the ability to say, I need to have diversity and I want to hire people across that represent the demographics of the city.
Of course.
So that's all I really want to talk about.
Sure. So,
Councilwoman.
That's precisely the essence of my request as well, to separate out civil service for the reasons that you just articulated.
So what we have are the actual numbers of exempt employees, but I just wanted to preface this by saying all of these folks weren't hired like in the last few months, so that many of them were already there. So our opportunity to really change that really rests with the number of new people that came in. So even though we have those numbers today, I would offer up that it might be more helpful.
So you're saying that there were people that were in executive positions across this spectrum that did not get moved?
Yes.
You sure?
From an exempt perspective, yes, I'm pretty sure of that.
There's some people, but I think...
So the answer is yes, there were people that were in executive staff that got moved.
Well, all of these exempt people are not in the executive staff. I'm sorry. All of these exempt people are not in the executive staff. They're just exempt.
All I want to talk about is executive.
Okay, well that's...
staff.
Why don't we get this information, exactly, exempt executive staff that has been hired, since January 4th, and, show you the numbers that way, so that we can have a more, a conversation looking at the numbers the way you want to look at them. Does that sound?
No,
okay.
That's why I said earlier, I wanted you to give me the best of your capabilities, accurate information, because I don't want to sit here and ask you questions about information that's not accurate.
Well, just so that we're clear, the information in the testimony is accurate. If you're looking,
no, I'm saying my information.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
No, Now, it did come from your information, but I'm saying maybe mine is inaccurate. Maybe we transpose numbers or something.
Well, we'll make sure to get you.
But the numbers we have are 22%.
Okay.
And that's clearly problematic, and I think we all agree.
Mm-hmm.
And my point is that the best opportunity to deal with that problem is in the transition of administrations or governance or whatever, or when there's significant layoffs. Records Commissioner, as an example. The Records Commissioner just left recently?
Yes, Joan Decker retired, yes.
And what process was established to
have
an opportunity for more diversity?
Well, there were candidates interviewed, and Jim Leonard was selected. He is a white male, but we felt he was most qualified to lead that department. That's one specific example. There are other areas where we brought in executives that are minority, which I don't want to necessarily point out specific individuals and go back and forth on that, but I agree with you that it's important.
I only brought it up because you said there's opportunities when people move or resign or whatever, then you have an opportunity to increase your diversity numbers, and there was an opportunity and you did not do that. And I happen to know Jim is a great guy. I never worked with him outside of this office, but I'm sure he's extremely qualified. But only reference it because you referenced it in terms of being able to, to change the demographics. Okay. All right, so you're going to get accurate information, information that I will now know that's accurate, since my information may not be right, although it did come from your numbers, but
We'll talk offline.
I will defer
about
to
it.
your information.
Okay.
And you'll be a part of that process, sir?
I will be a part of the process of trying to get all of the department diversity statistics up.
So you're saying you're not going to address until you get everything? I mean, I don't know, this is a, and I love the Public Property Commissioner. He's a great person, and these numbers here is 6 people, and it's like not a single minority. You got to explain that. So are you saying you're going to wait till you do the entire government before you address some of these issues?
I think the overall diversity plan is, with the snapshot, to have conversations with the commissioners or the executives of a particular department and point out where there are significant disparities between what the workforce looks like and what Philadelphia works like, and work on a plan for improvement.
We're going to do that. It's going to take you a year to do that?
It's going to, I can't give a specific timetable. I know we're committed to doing a document by the end of the year, but that's not something that that process has started, and it will continue throughout the summer with individual departments.
Okay, so I guess I'm trying to get a sense of who, throughout that time frame when there's opportunities to change the demographics, who's responsible for overseeing that?
The commissioner. That would not be my responsibility.
It'll be the individual commissioners?
Yes.
All right. Okay. I will. Wait a minute. Okay, so does that mean, one second, please. So if it's the commissioner's responsibility, who will be responsible for ensuring that the commissioners?
For my departments, that would fall on me. For the managing director's departments, that would fall on the managing director.
So it would be you and Managing Director DeBerdinas, the 2 primary entities?
Yes, and right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Kiona Sanchez.
Thank you. I want to stay in that line of the HR, because I agree with you, Council President, even as we do this Pew study, what is the protocol, and I want to talk about the civil service ones, what is the protocol as jobs get posted, and who's going to be monitoring them? And I'm going to say this is where I'm going to say it, and I don't want to highlight the department because there was an open competitive posting last week that included a requirement that it had to be 40 hours of required training by the department. So how is that open competitive? And so how are we going to monitor the new ones? What is going to be the protocol? Because there's a job description that says open competitive, but it has 40 hours of required approved training from the department.
And that's a civil service
Yes.
position. I mean, I think that speaks to a lot of the reform that's needed in
But
HR.
what are we going to do while we're doing this Pew stuff?
Well, I
what
would
is the
say,
protocol?
look, that we're trying to do, through our HR and talent unit, we are trying to do as much as for process change, for job spec changes, for training, recruitment. Some of it, falls on the Office of HR, which does not directly report to me, or the mayor, actually, reports to the Civil Service Commission. So we're trying to work our way through that.
I know, but because you have so many challenges, if we don't have an interim protocol that someone's monitoring this stuff, this is the stuff that gets posted. And
Right.
then, what you're saying and what you're doing are in conflict with each other. Because the exempt, that's low-hanging fruit. The civil service one, we're approving budgets that are going to allow departments to staff up. And so we have to have an interim protocol.
I hear what you're saying.
Because if not, a job like that gets posted. And it's a very low-hanging entry-level position, but somebody, including the Civil Service Commission, approves this requirement. And, and then, so folks call me and say, why can't I get this job? I don't have 40 hours pre-approved training from the department.
Right. I think that we're doing what we can do under the CAO in the meantime, with recruiting and training and some process changes. Human Resources needs to, the Office of HR, which reports to the Civil Service Commission, needs to take the lead on some of those civil service, diversity within the civil service regs and the job specs as well.
But we do have an opportunity to finance and others not to approve those positions to be slotted. I mean, there's so many different things we could be doing if people are not meeting a basic matrix.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and Commissioner Ross said last week they have not discussed bilingual selective factor, or the 3 points that took us 5 years to get the last administration to agree to. We're approving staff ups because we know police department has to staff up, and notwithstanding the collective bargaining stuff, it's like when there doesn't seem to be a standard by which all departments, at minimum, until we have this plan, PU study, right?
That we have some sort of, there's an executive order, there's all these other things around this diversity, but I just feel like waiting for a Pew study, waiting for this stuff is when we are approving budgets that are going to allow people to staff up, and openings say something different.
Why don't we, I hear what you're saying, and it's a very good point. Why don't we get back to you with a thoughtful response?
We want a protocol, because we want to be able to hold departments to the same standards.
Yes.
So if everybody's doing whatever, then it's going to be really hard, and then, we're going to have to question you. I just think in the interim, we need a standard protocol, particularly for those entry-level jobs. Like, no one, that's not cool. I mean, we could have that conversation when HR and civil service come up, but who approves a position like that?
We can get back to you about the interim.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Good.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rhynhart, I actually had a question with OIT, and I was wondering if Mr. Brennan was still here.
Sure.
Oh, great. Yep. Thank you. And it also has to do with your department, in part because I know that OIT is such an important area for making sure that the city becomes more modernized. We have an opportunity through our OIT to attract jobs amongst a diverse community of young people who want to stay in the city, who are innovative, creative, and we would like to see our department do that. And I know that Mr. Brennan, you had expressed concerns about the ability to attract that kind of dynamic, in part because we're competing with the creative sector. But the two areas that I wanted to go through in terms of a performance accountability in particular is to see if we can ask if OIT's department could submit to the council president's office a list of the capital projects that are currently online, what the deadlines are, what the budget is for that, and as well a list of your most recent major capital investment projects, the ones that are categorized by amount of money that was actually invested in them, and to understand what the timelines were, did they meet a deadline, and if we could get those to the council president's office, do you think that would be possible for us?
Sure, I actually have that list, so that's easy for us to get.
Okay, great. And the other thing that would be helpful is if we could maybe have a briefing on council, so you could kind of get us updated on that with a little bit more clarity. I'd probably prefer a briefing over a hearing on it, but if we could do that, I think that would be the first step towards better understanding the department.
I actually I think that's a fantastic idea, because I think there's a kind of a misunderstanding sometimes about how the city works as far as capital projects and why things are focused in certain ways. And a lot of your comments are like why things don't work. For example, why a lot of the financial things, why I hear Councilman Dom saying, why can't I do everything on my iPhone, But there's a reason for that. And I think if you understood better about the IT projects and how the money is allocated. And, we go through a rather extensive process to do that. I think you'd have a better understanding about, why some things work better than others.
Yeah, and I think that there's been some legitimate concerns raised about major investments made in OIT that where the projects didn't come to fruition, or they're taking much longer than they're supposed to be. And, there's questions about ensuring that the direction in which OIT is going are things that truly bring us into, that address issues of equity, that address issues around diversity, help Philadelphians understand how this is a place that's going to serve across the board, rather than maybe just being splashier projects, for lack of a better phrasing. But why don't we start with that list? I think that would be really important to help with, because I think it would help a lot of us on council better understand how OIT is thinking about tech and innovation for the future. The second area where I think it would be helpful to know, and this would overlap with both OIT in particular and human resources, since it was articulated at an earlier meeting. But, I know that you've raised concerns about the difficulty to compete with the private sector. And in part, I'm curious about whether your department, Ms. Rhynhart, could talk with human resources and with OIT about being more creative and flexible about the kind of work that could bring people, especially those in the tech sector, into city government. One of the things that I'm pretty sure that we're not really clear about is that if tech is viewed as a standard government kind of drudgery, or kind of like stuck in City Hall, and that we've got a creative economy and younger folks and very diverse folks who are much more mobile, who are moving around, and we're not flexible about that, particularly in a department in which it's articulated that, we're struggling to attract the kinds of people who are going to excite our city and bring us new projects and ideas. Is that an area where human resources could also look into this idea of tapping more creative possibilities around work with the city?
So there's few questions in there. I think first, I don't want to make it seem like we have a lot of great people working in IT. A lot of great people. I think
absolutely.
There's been a few articles about a few people that have left, and sort of triggered some questions about the city's policy to that you can't work from home, or you can't work remotely, you need to come to work with the city. And that is a rule. I mean, that the city employees follow. They come here to work every day. And so since it's a rule, it's not fair to let some not have to come to work while others, the vast majority, have to come to work. I think the conversation, though, with HR about, how do we recruit the most talented workforce. I mean, that's something that my office is actually directly working on, which is recruiting. And one of the things that we'll be focused on is, what do the millennials want to work here? How do we invigorate and inspire the next generation of civic leaders? And that's probably not just by, advertising a test in the newspaper and seeing who comes to take a test. That's not the way the young generation is. So I think we need to do exactly what you're saying and look at what are creative ways that we can attract talent.
Yeah, and for clarity, nothing that I said was meant to disparage anybody who's currently in government. It was more a reflection on the fact that that department had specifically articulated concerns about its difficulty in competing with the private sector. Second, I believe strongly in work rules, and I have a high level of standard on government work too, and wanting it to be highly accountable. And I think that there's a way to be creative about thinking through an ability to report in, to ensure that work's being done, to hold people accountable to the projects that they start and finish, and still be able to think creatively. And then the last point would be that I know that the term millennial sometimes comes with a whole host of presumptions, particularly around like class, and sometimes it can be race as well. And I want to be thoughtful that the creative economy in Philadelphia, and in particular around what needs to be done desperately around tech and innovation, is about the issue of disparity and access for low-income communities and primarily communities of color who are often cut out of that. And I'm particularly interested in creative ways in which our very diverse communities are pushing through on things, and I would hate to see them kind of excluded from that conversation. So it's just a term of where the millennial thing kind of sometimes doesn't always or necessarily capture the full range of diversity around particularly the tech and innovation sector.
Okay.
So we've got young people in high schools. We've got high schools that are online that have creative young people who are into graphic design, who are into computing, who are trying to push hard on these issues, and I want to make sure that they're part of that conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to punctuate the request made from Councilwoman Sanchez, and that while we want and work and look towards doing better after the peer report to address protocols, what I call in my office standard operating procedures now, would be valuable. So I look forward to that going to the President as well. How soon can we expect to have the snapshot of the staff exempt demographics that the President and I requested?
Oh, we could, within a day or two, we can pull
Okay.
it together, yeah.
Very well. So I am going to have my next conversation off the record, because I should.
Okay.
Okay, I'll speak with the Public Property Commissioner off the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. If no other members have any further questions, Rebecca, I want to thank you for spending all morning with us.
Thank
and
you,
look
Councilman.
forward to continuing the conversations and the discussions that we've had.